Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you in Nashville, rainy Nashville, Tennessee for SEC Media Days. And we got a lot to talk about today on the lineup. Will Gunter should be joining us here momentarily. David Schultz in a little bit. We'll also hear from one of our sponsors, Chris Aiken, Web-Footed Kennels over in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and the chairman of the College Football Playoff, Mr. Bill Hancock, will check in the last quarter of the hour. Again, we're only going 1 hour versus the normal 2 hours that we do Monday through Saturday. So follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Watch us live on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got, again, a lot to cover because today, Wednesday, Alabama is up with Coach Nick Saban, Arkansas with Coach Sam Pittman, Florida, Coach Billy Napier, and Kentucky with Coach Mark Stoops. They'll all be up on the big stage today in the electronic media room and everywhere. I mean, if you've never been to SEC Media Days, and not that many people have unless you cover it as part of the press, Buddy Martin's right, the press, media, you don't really realize how much how much interest there is. There are well over 1,000 people covering this event here in Nashville at the Grand Hyatt. And we're here blessed to have great sponsors like Gaddis Home Innovation. Check them out on our website, gaddishome.com. If you want to build your entertainment center, your man cave, also for business, you want to put a Bloomberg in, you want to build a home office, security cameras, you want to basically be in control of your life with your iPhone or the touch of a button, whatever kind of phone you have, Gaddis Home Innovation can make all of that happen. Hit the hyperlink on the website. I've known George 45 years. Fantastic. Also, Rumble Boxing Gym in Memphis, 1835 Union Avenue, Midtown Memphis, across from Walgreens at Union and McLean. Open every day of the week. They're on our website, rumbleboxinggym.com. And Camp Lee, great staff. They are there. They have student discounts, corporate discounts. You're going to get an incredible workout when you go there. The dumbbells. You're also going to be doing a ton of calisthenics. The sessions are 45 minutes each. Be the best decision you've made. Hewlett and Dunn, Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. They are loading up right now. Got a ginormous order from Filson, Devil Dog Jeans, Old South, Ariat, Stetson, you name it. And they've got great looking women's clothes. Audrey has some great dresses. They've got men's boots, like 7,000 pairs. They've got everything that you could want possibly. And they've got shoes, you name it. They've got luggage, gear. It's all Hewlett and Dunn, Boot and Clothing Company. Check them out at hewlettandunn.com. And Miss Rubin's Rubs, I got to say this, White Magic, Black Magic, Seafood Magic, Creole Magic, and the marinades. They're in about 1,000 grocery stores. And it goes back to 1935, the penny profit market down in Montgomery, Alabama. And these rubs, you can put them on anything. We use the Black Magic on brisket. It's also great on tenderloin. Just cover the tenderloin in that Black Magic, put some olive oil on there, and let it go on a low to medium fire. You will absolutely love it. And the Seafood Magic, I put it on rainbow trout, red snapper, grouper, anything. Rub it on there. It is just fantastic. Creole Magic, White Magic, they're good. White Magic's good on everything. On vegetables. If you like Brussels sprouts, soak them, coat them in that. And the marinades are great. But if you go to the grocery store and they don't have Miss Rubin's Rubs, say get them, order them. I'll be back when you do. In the meantime, go to missrubins.com. Also, you can order from Amazon in a number of other places, but you want Miss Rubin's Rubs. Okay. So I think about eating. I think about watching a lot of college football. You got to love it. And again, we'll talk with Chris Aiken, one of, he's just absolutely awesome. My dog trainer up in Jonesboro. I've known him 28 years. They have also do some great breeding up there with dogs with really deep pedigrees. Dogs can't read their pedigrees, but their owners can. Great quote given to me by my friend David Carrington with Avery Bandit, in charge of all the dog products over there. He's right. You got to train them. You got to get a great trainer. Chris Aiken, Web-Footed Kennels. You can follow him on Facebook in Jonesboro. I'll be up there next week at their big facility. They do it right. Will Gunter joining us here in just a moment. And I will say the takeaways from yesterday, there were many. But I did get a chance to ask a question to Auburn coach Hugh Freeze about NIL. And when you've got one guy in the locker room getting a big NIL contract and the people around him are getting very little or nothing at all. But they're getting a scholarship and all the benefits that come with that. We said, we've talked to him about that. Life's not always fair. You got to learn to deal with the circumstances, but it's an opportunity for these student athletes to get paid and all. But I think the message is, we're very aware of it. And I asked him about teaching financial literacy, which is critically important to anybody. I don't care if you're a student athlete, just a regular student. If I'd have listened to some of the smart people growing up that I knew and still know, man, I can't imagine what it would be like. But it's a wise thing to do. And I think NIL, they're going to be players that we hear a lot about. But the message and the general consensus among what we're hearing from the coaches up here is they're dealing with it, and they've got people that they're hiring to deal with NIL, because otherwise it would take away from their coaching, their ability to coach. Okay. So yesterday, we had Clark Lee from Vanderbilt coming in there. They had Kirby Smart, had Hugh Freeze, and had Zach Arnett. I'll tell you, Zach Arnett at Mississippi State, he was there with Mike Leach as defensive coordinator. Very impressive. Brad Logan Media Network, who's on with us a lot during football season. I'm looking forward to hearing from him again, talks about it. But Zach Arnett understands how to run a defense in the Mike Leach air raid offense. That's significant. That is big. He exudes confidence. He's from Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's got some relationships with Joe Lee Dunn, famous for the 3-3-5 defense and not wearing socks. And I go back and I think about what Zach Arnett said. He reeled off a number of players who've come through Mississippi State over the years. Everybody knows about Zach Prescott, and recently legendary Mississippi State linebacker, one of the greatest football players ever. Johnny Cooks passed away last week. So many outstanding players that have come through Starkville. And he said, we don't take a backseat to anyone. They have a lot of confidence, and they're fans. Zach Arnett said our Mississippi State fans are the most loyal fans of any college program in the country. But it's going to be different without Mike Leach, he said. But they've got Will Rogers. And Will Rogers, I think he was here for 10 hours yesterday. Mississippi State's outstanding record-setting quarterback out of Rankin, Mississippi. Impressive young man. Kirby Smart, he was asked, and Will, you were in there. He was asked about the off-the-field issues, and he said, look, young people are going to get in trouble when they're 18 to 22, and because of that, he said, we're working on it. He goes, ask any of my players that have been in trouble. He said, they're being punished, but what can he really say? We all know 18 to 22, but you got to have rules, got to hold people accountable. If guys are screwing up and they're not being punished, we all know that your program will just disintegrate. But, Kirby Smart said of the 20 players they recruited during the pandemic year when there were no visits and all, 17 of those 20 student athletes are still at Georgia. That's impressive. That means they want to be a part of that, and they're going for the third straight national championship. Clark Lee, I mean, my takeaway was he's in it to win it long term. They'll try to steal 2 or 3 games a year that they're not supposed to win, and if they beat the non-conference opponents, they can get 6 wins, 7 wins, and go to bowls and occasionally have a really good season for them, which would be 8 or 9 games like James Franklin did. But that was my takeaway from yesterday. Will Gunter from ESPN 107.5, The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. Did you draw anything especially that just really riveted you from any of the 4 coaches yesterday before we talk about who's on the lineup today?
No, not really. My two, we talked about it this morning. I thought, Kirby Smart basically taking the Bud Kilmer approach from the West Canaan Coyotes and the police officers of, hey, boys are boys and they speed at that age. That's what they do. They drive really fast. He forgot to mention that through NIL, we give them really fast cars.
Yeah.
But and we'll get into that a little bit more. But him basically saying, well, I got a speeding ticket when I was 18 to 20 years old. I thought that was just kind of funny the way he kind of glossed over that.
Yeah.
But on top of that, and then Hugh Freeze, and I don't know what you expect. We laughed about it. I said we laughed about it. It's not something necessarily to laugh about, but Hugh Freeze comparing his trials and tribulations, right? Like the ones he created where he was paying players and doing it pretty blatantly, and comparing it to the passing of his tight end, Luke Deal's father, saying, the trials and tribulations you go through kind of define you as a person. And I'm thinking, the passing I lost my mother when I was 9 years old to leukemia. But comparing that and Hugh Freeze basically saying, yeah, I went through hard times and I didn't think I'd ever be back here. But then we started winning at Liberty and basically he admitted, the SEC schools, if you win, we don't really care what you did in the past. We'd love to have you back. And I'm sure Bobby Petrino was somewhere in College Station going, yes, listen to that guy. Just win. I can come back.
He's very wise.
I can do that. But you're right. I mean, Zach Arnett, obviously, you knew it was going to be a tough position for him yesterday because Mike Leach was always or had become a central figure of this. And it's hard for anybody to be Mike Leach. And then Clark Lee, if you read about it, I was trying to study a little bit more. And it's funny that we're right here in Nashville. And as I leave town, I might drive, I think, right down there. I think that's the direction you have to go. But this $600 million entire athletics improvement that they're doing, not just for football, but it's specifically meant to enhance football. And he sees this coming and what he can do to build this program. And you're exactly right. Clark Lee strikes me as a guy who maybe starts to take more of the Kentucky approach, which is, hey, let's schedule 4 non-conference games. Vanderbilt doesn't have to play an out of conference rival like Kentucky does. They can play, 4 cupcakes. Get Kent State in here. Get Troy or I don't know. But you get 4 victories in there, and then why can't we beat South Carolina? Why can't we beat Missouri? We just beat Florida last year. Why can't we beat Kentucky? Let's get to 6 and let's go to 7 or 8 straight bowl games by winning 6 or 7 games. And of course, I think we'd be naive to think Clark Lee doesn't look at Notre Dame as Vanderbilt as a stepping stone job. Hey, if I could make 5 or 6 straight bowl games, Bobby Johnson was a hot commodity in the early 2000s, about 2005, 2006. Yeah. When he turned that program around, we saw what happened to James Franklin as well.
Well, Bobby Johnson waited too long, like Gary Barnett did, when he was at Northwestern and then Colorado. And when you're hot, you got to go, especially at a place like Vanderbilt. But I think you're right. You're talking about Vanderbilt. You got to play at least one Power 5 non-conference game a year. Don't forget that. So they got to play somebody in the Power 5. But the Kentucky approach is Mark Stoops has been given as much time as he wants. And he's been there 10 years. So this is year 11. They're as good as they're going to be. I think that's just Kentucky football. It's actually, there was a period prior to last season where they'd won 10 games twice in the last 4 years. That had never happened in Kentucky football. So Vanderbilt, they're actually spending money now. They've got alumni with a lot of money, but they don't spend it. I don't know if they really ask them for it. Dudley Field, Vanderbilt Stadium, now First Bank Field, it needs help. It needs money. It's a dump. It's been a stadium where when Vanderbilt plays Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, especially Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, and Alabama, they'll take the stadium over. I've been to a lot of Auburn Vanderbilt games in Nashville, and I mean, the Auburn people just think, well, it's 75 miles from the Alabama border, or less than that. So, but there are a lot of Auburn and Alabama people in Nashville. Nashville's not quite like Atlanta will, but everybody going forward, it's just going to be a bigger and bigger place for everybody else's alumni, just like Atlanta. Nashville, Vanderbilt better step up and spend, and what'd you say, 600 million on athletics?
I think that's what I saw on ESPN yesterday. I didn't know this. I knew they were doing the football field because they've torn out that open end zone that they have.
Yeah.
I knew they were redoing that, but apparently there's a whole $600 overall athletics improvement program going on. So you're talking about baseball, basketball, like softball. You get the point. The whole athletics as a whole,
Audrey,
everything. But
text Brett Daniels.
But yeah. So they're lining that up there. Apparently, that will increase I hope to help the program as well.
Yeah. I mean, and now let's look at who's coming up here today. And you're right about Kirby Smart. I mean, we could have been there all day saying, if you don't hold these guys accountable and give them, 50 hours of public service work, or make them run stadiums, put a 25 or 50 pound vest filled with sand on them and make them run from the field up to the top of the stadium and back down. That's a round trip. That counts as one when they get caught speeding. You're right. No regard for the law when you're 18 could be a real problem when you're 22 or 23. I can tell you're right. You drive around now, the Dodge Charger, the Avenger, whatever it is, man, those things are fast. And that's what a lot of these kids are driving. So I would, he can dismiss it or whatever, but man, you better crack down on the problems. They're never going to go away. But today we've got Nick Saban in Alabama coming in, questions about, people, is his dynasty, is his legacy at stake? Hell no, it's not. I think he's just digging in for the long haul, more competitive. And Arkansas, Sam Pittman will be in here. Florida, Billy Napier. Kentucky, Mark Stoops. What are you looking for? We'll start first with Alabama and Nick Saban. What are you looking for him to say that'll make you think, okay, he's moving forward versus just looking back on what he's done?
We talked about that this morning here a little while ago. Nick Saban is a guy who is going to come. Nick Saban loves college football. If there was a commissioner of college football, it would be Nick Saban. So I'm really interested to see, because he's going to come with a message today. And I don't know what it's going to be. Is the message it's going to be one of two things. If it's related to his team, which he normally doesn't come with a message about his team.
Yeah.
But if he comes with a message, it's, hey, we're still Alabama. We're still one of the top 2 or 3 programs in the country. I know we haven't won a national championship in 2 years, and I know last year LSU knocked us off. We're still Alabama. We still have just basically all 4- and 5-star people. Does he go with that message? I don't think he does. I don't think he has to. What I think he does, though, is Nick Saban will show up and have a message about college football that he wants to get across. Is it another thing about NIL? Is it something about the transfer portal? Is it something about the expanded playoff? Is it something about maybe 8 or 9 game scheduling for the SEC? Nick Saban will usually show up with a broad topic that he wants to discuss. And I am interested. He comes up here now in a little less than an hour, so I'd like to get back downstairs for that. But he is going to come with a broad topic. But again, if it's about Alabama, is he pushing? I don't feel like he has to. I don't feel like he has to. But does he show up pushing the narrative of like, hey, I know we're not real sure who the quarterback is. I know we lost the number 1 pick in the draft, and we lost a really good player, Will Anderson, but we're still Alabama. Losing to LSU doesn't change anything. Georgia winning 2 national championships back-to-back doesn't change anything. I'd be surprised if that's his message. One other thing you mentioned, he's 71 years old. He'll be 72 in October. And I do wonder if he has a different message about his age to kind of reiterate, hey, look, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I'm around for quite a while.
I think he does, and I think he's so competitive that he's won 6 national championships at Alabama, 7 counting the one at LSU back in 2003. I think Nick Saban is so driven and so competitive, organically driven. Okay, he doesn't have to be told this. I think he wants to win a 7th at Alabama just to say he won more than anyone else prior to him. No disrespect to Paul W. Bryant from Fordyce, Arkansas, but that's how competitive that man is. And again, age is just a number. I mean, there are people that are 35 that wear their pants up to their pecs that look like old, geezers. And it's just a number. He's in great shape. I was down there working out in the gym this morning. I couldn't go run because it was thundering and lightning, and just hope we don't get blown off the air. There was a rumble of thunder in the shower this morning. I was like, wow. As they said in Kingpin, the angels must be bowling. That's always the classic. But I'm with you. If Nick Saban were to come in and say all that stuff about Georgia winning doesn't matter and LSU, would be telling me he is worried about that. He always virtue signals into the future. He may be talking about, sometimes the hurry up, no huddles. He didn't like that until he brought Lane Kiffin in. So he's a visionary is what he is. But I want to ask you about Arkansas and Sam Pittman. This will be year 4. He's got Dan Enos up there, who was there with Brett Bielema and Brandon Allen, and they did some really good things. He's been in Alabama. He's been around. That's an offense that works in the SEC, and he's got a hell of a quarterback in KJ Jefferson. And Arkansas will have an offensive line. That's Sam Pittman's. That's his thing. I mean, he will always, even though he's the head coach, he's an offensive line coach at heart. But let's talk about the Razorbacks in 23.
Yeah, it's interesting where my table is at on Radio Row. Right next to me is an Arkansas station. And this morning, as we were in a break, they were on air and they were talking about their loss last year to Liberty, to Hugh Freeze, and the 21-19 loss. And you kind of go back, and last year in Atlanta, when we were in Atlanta for SEC Media Day, Sam Pittman was kind of the darling. Arkansas was kind of the dark horse. Everybody had big thoughts for what they were going to be. I was on the opposite end of that. I thought that Arkansas may struggle, but obviously after they beat South Carolina in week 2, they jumped all the way up to number 10 when they played Missouri State, and then they got past Missouri State, but then they lost 3 straight to Texas A&M and somebody else, and then they got pounded by Mississippi State in Starkville. I think 40-17 was the final, and they dropped to 3-3. They had to upset Mississippi and Lane Kiffin late in the season to become bowl eligible, and then had that great Liberty Bowl game against Kansas. But this was a team that got as high as number 10 and then finishes 6-6, wins the bowl game there to have a better season. But they're one team, man, that I think comes in, and I'm not saying that Sam Pittman is on the hot seat. That's not what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, he's not the darling. He's not the feel-good Arkansas native who's come home and resurrected everything that he was last year. Arkansas went through some of those difficult times with Chad Morris. So it's a different vibe, I think, for Sam Pittman today. And I'm interested to see how he handles it and how he reacts to, again, not being maybe as welcomed. Is that the right word? Maybe as welcomed and as he had been last year when Arkansas was really flying high. 7-6 is a lot different than 9-4.
Yeah, and the games, they won the close games in the 21 season when they went 9-4. They lost most of the close games last year. I mean, you think about also KJ Jefferson, great dual threat quarterback, hell of a quarterback. And with Rocket Sanders, it's the best, 1-2 punch maybe in the SEC. But last year, because he was banged up during the season, and everybody gets hurt, but KJ was a no-go in Starkville, and they lost to Mississippi State. He was a no-go against LSU when the Tigers came up to Fayetteville the week after beating Alabama in overtime at home. They lost 13-10. So winning the close ones the year before, not winning them the next year, going 7-6. I was at the Liberty Bowl when they beat Kansas. That was an exciting game. Not much of a defensive masterpiece, but I think they've got some coaches on there now. Dan Eno's offensive coordinator. Travis Williams be working with defensive coordinator, co-coordinator. Marcus Woodson. I know those guys from Auburn, and then Marcus at Florida State and Travis at UCF with Gus. But they're great recruiters, but they're great developers of talent. And so I think this year it's going to be winning the close ones, not winning the close ones. This year, you better win every game you're supposed to win if you're Arkansas, and you better sneak in a few wins to get to 8 or 9. Or then maybe Sam Pittman, you're right. The fans will look at it differently. He's from Grove, Oklahoma. He grew up a Razorback fan, but again, that only goes so far. But you look at Jimbo coming up on year 6. Will, if they were to fire him after the season without cause, they got to come up with $67 million. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a fireman. I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to be a garbage man sometimes. Nowadays, if I'm a kid, forget about it. I want to be an SEC coach and get fired without cause and get a $20 or $30 million buyout. It's the greatest gig since all these crooks in corporate America get these golden parachutes after they run companies into the ground and they give them $100, $150 million to go away. That's where they learned that from, by the way, Will.
Well, I listen. In Columbia, South Carolina, a couple years ago, they had a basketball coach who basically the entire city would have been happy to help him move out of his house and kick him out. And I remember, this is 2011, 2010, 2000, somewhere in there, prior to Frank Martin, and he was getting $4 million to just stop coaching, go away, stop coming to the office. And I remember thinking, my God, if you're this bad at your job and you get $4 million. I really should have pursued basketball a little bit, the basketball coaching more than I did. But, you look at the schedule for Arkansas this year, obviously out of the gate, Western Carolina and Kent State should be 2-0, shouldn't be a problem. BYU, that'll be a signature game. BYU, I don't know BYU's first 2 games. I don't know if they're playing I don't know if they've got a conference game prior, like a big non-conference game, a big conference game since they're moving to the Big 12. But you look at it, that could be a signature moment for BYU to stand up for the Big 12. So that one's a little bit dicey. Then you go on the road at LSU. And then there's that big one. You just mentioned Jimbo Fisher. And I feel like this is where the season could turn for Arkansas. If you can beat BYU at home, if you can take them down at home, you're 3-0. Maybe you don't beat LSU, but that Texas A&M game, what is it? It's in Jerry World. It's a game that generally is a very close game. You lose that one and you fall to 3-2. That's where maybe it starts to get a little bit dicey with Alabama still on the schedule, with Hugh Freeze still on the schedule, with Lane Kiffin still on the schedule. They got, I know, one crossover game against Missouri. Their other East game is Florida this year, and they got to go to the Swamp and Billy Napier. So, with that being said, you lose that A&M game, it turns into an interesting season. Whereas if you win, you hope to be 4-1 at the end of September and feeling really good about yourself.
Yeah, and you're right about these games. And Arkansas has struggled. Last year they lost another close one with Texas A&M, and they finally had won the year before. So it's interesting when you look at all the stuff that's happening. And we're going to do this. We're going to bring on Mr. Bill Hancock, chairman of the College Football Playoff. Mr. Hancock, Bill Hancock, welcome to Sidelines this morning. Appreciate you joining us. We'll only keep you just about 10 minutes or so. I know you've got a big day ahead of you. Will Gunter's on from ESPN 107.5, The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. And we're kind of talking about the coaches' takeaways from yesterday's meetings and everybody on the docket today. But while we got you, and Will, this man is busier than a one-legged man in a karate match. He goes up and down radio and TV row. Thank you for taking time to join us. And how excited are you about the future of college football?
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me on. And we sure do have a rainy morning here in Nashville.
Yeah,
I'm glad I'm not glad I'm not driving this morning.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. great future ahead for college football. We're bringing new fans to the game. Gosh, look at the attendance numbers from around the country. Look at the television viewership numbers. The game is so popular, and it will only continue to grow.
Yeah. And one of the things, you announced that in 25 you're going to retire, but I can never see you. I can never imagine you not being part of college football because you've been such a big part of it forever. And we have Ken Capps and Bo Carter on, and I've learned a lot about you from you being on the show and from them. But thank you for what you do. And number two, we're going to go from a 4 to a 12 team playoff. The number 5 team is always the best team in the country. Like the backup quarterback's always the best player on the team. The number 13 team, by the way, they don't have a 13th floor here at this hotel. I noticed that on the elevator. But let's talk about that. It's such an easy job selecting those 4. Will and I, we're sure no one ever gets upset, do they?
No, they don't. And before I came over to football 19 years ago, I had spent 16 years as director of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. And back in my day, Team 65 never got upset either.
Well, and I always say that.
Yeah.
What's the first part of the selection show on ESPN or on CBS, whatever, after you've announced the 64, 68? It's not, oh, look at the top 4 seeds. It's, oh, look who got left out. Look at that's always the first part, right? The 65th team, 66th team, and you could go to 100. And what would be the first part of the selection show? They'd say, look at team 101 or 102. I've never enjoyed that we're always looking at the ones that got left out instead of the ones that got let in first.
Yeah. Let me say something about that. Y'all will appreciate this, I think. That's a good thing. It's a good thing that Team 5 is disappointed. It's a good thing that Team 65 is disappointed, because it shows that we have an event that people want to participate in.
Yeah.
I feel bad for those schools and their fans and their players, but the fact is it's a good thing that we have disappointed teams. So I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to go back in history because when you come to town, I mean, it's like Ed McMahon showing up at your door in the day. You've won something big when you've been to Tuscaloosa or Athens or Auburn or wherever. Bill Hancock's in town. Get it? It's a great time. I think about the narrative people have tried to push that. And my dad was born in 1928. He's listening right now. He's 95. Back in the 50s, he said the narrative was, well, we're putting football on TV. Nobody will go to the games. You think about what happened. It just led to the expansion. And then in the 80s, Chuck Ninus, the CFA, Georgia and Oklahoma sued to get more games on football. Every game's on TV. Everybody's expanding their stadiums. Do you remember it kind of like that, like saying we're just going to keep on keeping on?
Well, I certainly heard all those people saying people will not go to the game. The game will be ruined if there's more games on TV. And those were smart people. Those were people who cared, who wanted to do the right thing, but they just misjudged all the number of new fans that would come to the game because of television. Yeah. We all make misjudgments. I guess I've only made about 4 so far this morning, but they were just wrong about that. We got new fans, and we have the potential for many more new fans.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just draws people in. I'm looking at season ticket sales around the country, and they're just exploding. And I just tell people it's just another pothole in the road of life, man. We'll get through it. We'll jump back in here with Mr. Bill Hancock, the chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee. You there? Yeah, you're muted, I think.
Did we lose Will?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Will,
I'm here. I'm here. I apologize.
Yeah,
I don't know if y'all saw this flash of lightning back.
Yeah, I did.
I was talking about bad decisions, and the flash of lightning caught me off guard, and so I was sitting there.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this, Mr. Hancock, because I think the big discussion now that you're going to bring more teams in it, you personally, would you like to see a uniform conference schedule across the board? Because strength of schedule is going to become pretty important with a 12. I think it's going to become pretty important with a 12-team conference schedule. And obviously being from Columbia, South Carolina, and in the SEC, a lot of our discussion in the month of May was as it pertained to an 8 or 9 game conference schedule and all that. And we know what the SEC is going to do for at least 1 year. Do you think to help the committee members it makes it easier for all of the power conferences to have a uniform, say, 9-game conference schedule, 10-game conference schedule, so that when you're trying to make your final selections on those final teams, that it'll give you a little bit more of an idea of how to select.
The conferences can set up their schedules however they want to. And the committee just takes the schedules that they have and compares the teams side by side. If you look back through the past, I haven't seen a lot of difference in the committees, how they handle 8 or 9. It's just side by side. Who did they play? Game by game by game. And that's what the committee does. So I've heard the debate about 8 or 9, and I kind of enjoy it, frankly, because it shows a lot of people care and a lot of people have ideas. But I don't think it makes a significant difference for the committee. It's just who you played. Now, you need to play, in my opinion, somebody pretty good out of conference. Yeah. And if you look at the teams that have made the playoff, that they've either played somebody pretty good out of conference or they've had a tremendous record against the good teams in their conference. I'll go on here just a little bit. There's another factor here that people don't talk about it, and it's the luck of the draw of who you get to play in your conference. To me, that's probably more important than 8 or 9. And that's a double-edged sword. If you get to play the good teams, you might lose. But if you don't get to play the good teams, then you don't get the benefit of strength of schedule. Strength of schedule has always been important to our committee, and it always will be.
Yeah. And I want to ask you this now. The level, you look at a school like Auburn, when A&M and Missouri came into the league in 2012, Georgia had to play at Auburn in 2012 and again at Auburn in 2013. And now, for Auburn fans, and in the interest of full disclosure, I'm an Auburn graduate, as my dad is, and one of my boys is. But I look at it objectively, and I'm probably harder on Auburn than I am any school in America because it's my school. But I think about now Auburn has to play Georgia and Alabama at home one year. The next year they have to go on the road. Those are the two biggest rivals Auburn's got. But I take pride in that and playing a tough schedule. I always have. And you think there's any way that they can take into account you're having to play both of them? But the SEC, even if you move the Georgia game around, they're just going to put LSU in there or A&M in mid-November. There's nowhere to hide. But is that taken into account? Because the question I'm getting to is you could have a 9-3 possibly or 10-2 SEC team, maybe 2 or 3 in a 12-team playoff. They're not going to look at it and say that's too many from one conference. You're just looking at the best teams, aren't you?
Well, of course, yes. The committee takes every game into account. And it even takes into account, did you play tough opponents back to back to back? All of that matters. And what it comes down to is you're being considered against 3 or 4 other teams. Well, what did those other 3 or 4 other teams do? How was their schedule? That's what it comes down to. Is you're up against small groups of teams, and look at your schedule beside those other teams' schedules.
Gotcha.
I like.
We'll
I
jump
like
back in.
That's
a great answer. I
like what you said there about the how the schedule lines. I'm a big believer. The SEC, you're going to have a tough schedule every year, but I always do look at one of the first things I look at is when the schedules come out. Who do you have after your bye week? Perfect example for South Carolina is they get Florida is going to be a pivotal game for South Carolina this year. The game's in Columbia, and Florida will be playing their 7th straight game on October 14th when they come into town. South Carolina will be coming off of a bye. So I'm with you. And I, that to me is a huge part of college football scheduling we don't talk about is when you play a big opponent and if it's after a bye week, because that can really change some dynamics when two teams, like you said, are very equal. And so I like hearing that about looking not just at the strength of schedule, but okay, when did you get this team? When did you get that team? How did they fall on your schedule? Because college football is different than y'all know this than any other sport in terms of it's physical, man. And you can lose players. Players can get banged up. And if you don't have a bye week or if you're not coming off of maybe an easier non-conference game, it can really change that game the following week.
No doubt. No doubt about it.
Yeah. when you go around the country and you're based in Dallas, my concern now is the SEC. We're bringing in Texas and Oklahoma next year. You live in Texas. I've been to games in Austin, not Norman, but a lot of people think, oh, there'll be this learning curve. I think it'll be a quick learning curve. Those are very competitive programs. So the SEC, I think, is in great shape. But I'm concerned as a fan growing up. I appreciate the game of football. I'm with you. I've always said, if you want to have a great basketball program at a school, your fans better get as upset after a loss as they do in football. Then it will happen. You're right. You alluded to that earlier. The fact that the number 5 team or the number 13 or the number 101 is upset, that's good because that means they care and there's interest. But I'm worried about the Pac-12 football out there. If Oregon and Washington follow suit and leave and go maybe to the Big Ten, what's going to happen out there? And that's because it matters. We need football to be good all over the country.
Yeah, we do. There's no doubt about that. And I think the way that the 12-team tournament will be set up, playoff will be set up with 6 conference champions will help the game nationally.
Okay.
Because there's 6 conference champions who know they're going to be in the playoff. And so they better crank up and win that conference, and then they'll go see how they do in the playoff. I love the balance between the 6 champions and the 6 at-large teams.
I do too. I didn't even think about that really until you said it, Will. I mean, and that then in November, the top 25 teams in the rankings are all, theoretically going to be thinking, hey, we got a chance to make the playoffs. So that's going to keep interest in football all over the country. That's brilliant on y'all's part.
Yeah, that was intentional. That was intentional. We thought, what can we do to strengthen the game nationally? Oh, yeah. 6 conference champions and 6 at-larges. I don't know how many teams will be in the hunt in November. No one knows. But I would think it would be 30 or more. Besides, are you ranked in the top 25? But are you going to have a chance to compete for your conference championship? I'm sure it'll be 30 or more.
Can we hold your feet to the fire and get an answer? Because right now there's a Power 5, and you're saying a 6th conference. Can we drag that out of you? There's got to be.
Yeah.
That means we're adding a conference to the Power. You want to break some news?
Well, yeah. I mean, no, I'm not breaking any news. But the fact is that the 6 highest ranked conference champions will be in the playoff.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The 6th highest. So kind of like we do now. So it could be, so there's not going to be a 6th conference that's brought into the, into that where they get an automatic bid. For example, the AAC doesn't automatically get a conference automatic bid. It'll be the 6 highest conference champions.
Yeah. There's no automatic bids. That's another beautiful thing about the new format. Well, about our
that's an interesting. I mean, I didn't either. I've missed that or I've skimmed right over it because that's an interesting part there that I think, as you just said, keeps all conferences involved. It opens the door for everybody to become involved if you have a conversation. Now, how does that fit? Real quick, how does that fit with an independent? We know there's an independent that's sitting out there. How does that fit with the independent?
Well, the independent's path into the playoff is going to be among the 6 highest ranked at-large teams. 6 highest ranked conference champions, and then the 6 highest ranked at-large teams.
Very interesting.
This is going to be, and I heard, I think it's Lee Fitting from ESPN was talking about, or maybe it was Reese Davis saying, how do you keep fans down in the South interested in college football, a rivalry like the Apple Cup in Washington State in November? This will do it. I mean, you got 25 or 30 teams all thinking. I mean, Mr. Hancock, when people talk about the regular basketball season doesn't matter, I can tell you since Bruce Pearl has been at Auburn, every game, Matt, you are on the edge of your seat for every game. When I was there when Sonny Smith was coaching, every game mattered. I used to get to go talk to Coach Smith, and I learned so much, but they all matter. And you've been on that committee, and you think about it. Sometimes the team doesn't get in. You forget about that dumb loss that you had early in the season. Well, that committee remembers that loss.
Yeah, every game matters. And let me tell you something else. Let me give you, before I have to go
Yeah,
here, let me give you one other thing to think about. We're all talking about the 12-team CFP, and that's great. But really, it's a 22-team event because all 10 conference championship games will matter. The winners of those 10 games will continue on in the playoff.
Yeah.
So it's more than 12.
Yeah. Listen, I know you got to get going. You've got a lot of interviews, but I want to say thank you so much, Mr. Bill Hancock, for coming on here with us. Look forward to getting you on again here soon. But thank you for what you do for college football. The message you delivered today is it's just going to get better. We're bringing sand to the beach by going to 12. I love it.
Y'all take care. I'll see you downstairs.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Bye.
That is Will, I'm going to tell you what, I love what he said about creating that interest. Great question that you had. I love that. We're going to be joined in just a minute by one of my sponsors, Chris Aiken from Web-Footed Kennels, real quick. And then we're going to talk some more football. He loves it as well. But I got to tell you, what Bill Hancock said, the interest. And don't you agree that the 13th team, the 5th team, the 101st, that's what makes college football a 24/7, 365 game, day a year thing. I remember when Pat Dye came to Auburn, he said, I coached at East Carolina 6 years. He goes, in the state of North Carolina, they're talking about the four corners. I go out to Wyoming. When's the rodeo? I get down here in Alabama. They're talking about college football every damn day. And that interest, and you're in South Carolina, you're seeing it as well. Let's do this real quick. Chris Aiken is on here with us right now. Good morning, Chris. How things? You're not getting rain over there. We're getting hammered over here in Nashville. But look, I know you got a lot going on. I've known you a long time. Web-Footed Kennels in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Got a lot of people that listen on this show and watch that hunt, and they're big outdoorsmen. We're about 6 weeks from the start of dove season. Kind of tell people a little about, what you need to be doing with your dog. And also, y'all do breedings, select breedings, some of the best dogs in the United States. And if possible, someone wants to get a dog, how would they reach out to you and make that happen?
Well, I mean, most people just holler at us on Facebook, on Web-Footed Kennels, or just to holler at us on our phone number, 870-974-1257. We've got puppies all the time. We've got some grand bred puppies going home this weekend. We got blacks and yellows going home right now, and we've got them all the time. So puppies aren't a problem.
And I know I've been up there to your kennel, folks. It is absolutely, it's impeccable. They've got technical ponds. They train for junior, senior, masters, field trials. Chris has got probably 10 people working there with you. They're traveling all over yeah, it's an incredible staff. Tell us real quick, what would you tell somebody that says, hey, I'm opening weekend, everybody's jacked up, they want to go out dove hunting Labor Day weekend, but if your dog hadn't been working out and you got 6 weeks to get them ready, kind of give a quick little primer, and then we'll let you go, and look forward to having you on again next week as we focus a lot more on hunting and fishing on top of college football.
And I always think about dove season, I think of it being hot. And I don't know about you, but all my personal dogs are in the house and they're laying on the couch and they're just chilling out and hanging out, enjoying the summer and, going to the lake during the summer and all that. But they're really not out in the heat. They're really not acclimated to it. And, man, no different than you and I. We just need to get the dogs acclimated a little bit, get them out, work them some, get them in shape, get them back in their fighting weight, and get them back in their fighting weight and get them ready to go. So get them out, throw them some bumpers. Man, I do a lot of stuff in the water. So that I can, this man will swim up a bunch. It gets them in great shape. Doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Just get the dog in a bumper and go to a pond. Man, they're doing a lot of swimming. They're doing a lot of exercising. They're getting in shape. They're out in the heat. The water keeps them cool. And also it's such a low impact deal on the dog. It doesn't hurt their shoulders, elbows, hips, all that kind of stuff. And just gets them in great shape. I mean, we all know what it does for us when we swim laps and do all that. Basically doing the same thing for the dog, but they're having a whole lot more fun. But it is very difficult to get these dogs off the couch, out of the AC, put them in a dove field. I mean, like I'm in Arkansas, but I've hunted in Tennessee all my life. And, it opens up at noon on that first day of September. And, man, it's hot as Hades out there, and so these dogs sitting out in the sun, especially these black labs sucking up the sun And you got to get these dogs acclimated to it. You just can't take them out of the office and out of the house and put them in the middle of the dove field and expect them not to get in trouble.
Yeah,
So, when we do get out there, make sure you got plenty of fluids on them. Get in the shade if you can. And, if you can hunt around some water where they can get in water every now and then and cool down, that's good.
Last question. Is there a temperature cutoff? Mine is 82 degrees. I ain't hunting them past 82, or I'm going to hunt them early in the morning, but I'm going to hunt them away from people, especially if it's a young dog.
Well, I think that not only the temperature is what we really pay attention to, but let's like I got some cloud cover out here today. It's been spitting rain all morning, not bad at all, although the temperature's higher than that. We got a real nice breeze out of the south this morning, 10 to 15. That's helped a bunch. So, it's over 82. I'd be willing to hunt a dog today. Just use some common sense. Just make sure, if the wind's not blowing, humidity's high. It's hot outside. Just take care of your dogs. I mean, man, because look, these dogs will not take care of themselves. Not the good ones. They will not take care of themselves. You've got to take care of them. It's your responsibility. And last thing you want to do is call the kids and call mom and tell them you got their dog hurt, got him overheating the dove field. You're trying to pick up some silly little bird. So, man, be careful with them out there. Do a little conditioning between now and dove season. Get out there and have some fun with them and get them ready for duck season.
Chris, thank you so much. Hey, how can they follow you on Facebook?
Man, Web-Footed Kennels, WEBBFOOTED. I got 2 B's in there on Web-Footed. And, man, just reach out to us. Man, we're on there all the time. We list a lot of litters on there. Anybody needs us for training, puppies, trained dogs, whatever, just holler at us.
Look, we're looking forward to having you on. Thanks so much for being a sponsor of Sidelines. We'll look forward to having you on again next week. Have a great day.
Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. All right, I'll tell you one thing. I'll be up there next week to check him out. I've got to get another dog. I had one die 2 years ago, and I've been training competitively since '95. And Chris is one of the absolute best in the country. Web-Footed Kennels, Web with 2 B's. Will, great questions that you asked, Bill Hancock, and we'll see him downstairs today. Who have you not seen? Is it kind of like just going to the Oscars or the Grammys? I mean, it is the who's who in college football. Who's the most interesting person you've met? Now, speaking of that, have you met the Dos Equis beer guy?
No.
I mean, the world's most interesting man. I don't think he's here. I'm just saying, who have you met down there that you've really learned a lot from, besides Mr. Bill Hancock?
Let's see. Well, I was trying to think. We were talking about this 2 days ago. This is my 6th or 7th year coming. There was 2 years that I didn't come because of COVID, and then 1 year it really wasn't worth coming because they didn't have Radio Row. They brought the event back, but it wasn't worth coming. I think that was 2021, if I'm thinking correctly. But man, that's a good question. In my time I've interviewed you saw that lightning too, huh?
Yes. I just hope we make it 8 minutes.
All right. I was like, all right. And I was thinking about walking down to Broadway to get lunch today, but I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. I've interviewed pretty much everybody that you could interview here. Obviously, I've never like talked to one-on-one Nick Saban or some of those guys, but I'm trying to think. I was looking, Facebook will put up the little Facebook memories, and there was one time I was interviewing Marcus Spears because he was with a sausage. He was doing some sausage. That was years ago in Birmingham. Yeah. Obviously, I've done Paul Feinbaum as well. Again, I'd have to go back at all the pictures. I was kind of browsing through them the other day. I'm trying to think of which. With Matt Stinchcomb, I think, offensive lineman. And I like getting into stories. I don't really care about what they think. They go around through so many different interviews. My interviewing style is a little bit different in terms of I like to kind of relive the past and playing days and what it was like going against this player, what you learned, and talking about past history. But, yeah, there's been a lot. I saw I'm trying to think of it, Heather Dinich. I had not either she just got into town or I just hadn't seen her. I saw her this morning. And so that was one. So I was trying to remember, you see these people, you only see them once a year. And I'm trying to remember who she was. I finally had to ask somebody, but it's an event. It's an event. That's for sure.
It really is. And I think like what you say, our theme of Sidelines is history, traditions, and heroes. And I got Doug Dean, AU Dose, listening right now up on the Kenai River in Alaska. They're up there salmon fishing, just slaying them. I'm like, send me some videos and some slabs, but it's a 3-hour time difference. So it's, we come on for them at 5 o'clock in the morning. But the takeaways from all this you do see a lot of the national people that are here. I saw Dennis Dodd working out, Conor O'Gara this morning in the gym. Like I said, you couldn't run down Broadway because of the lightning. And it was unfortunate that concert last night. I was looking forward to hearing Midland down on Broadway. And I think back about that great Glenn Campbell song, Rhinestone Cowboy. When you walk in these streets of Broadway, is he talking about Nashville? Is he talking about New York City? I think he's talking about Broadway. But I got to tell you, Nashville just absolutely crushes it. As big a city as it is, and the growth, you look around you, man, you still feel like you're in a small town. I mean, and everybody is wearing cowboy boots, men, women. Man, there's something there are a lot of talented people in this town. A lot of great stuff happening. We're not that far from the state capitol, but anyway, we got a few more minutes. We're going to cut the show in half today because we got to get downstairs. So Mark Stoops and Billy Napier. I'm going to be. I was on Buddy Martin's show last night with Buddy, and we're going to be on again tonight. Billy Napier, what are you looking for? We got about 5 minutes left for him to say that makes you think, okay, I'm starting to get a grasp on this, because they're certainly recruiting well, but those guys won't be there till 24.
Well, number one, with Billy Napier, you want to see if they hold on to those guys. And I'm not being funny, but after what happened with Jaden Rashada last year and with NIL and with everything, I think with them, it's a matter of getting to December. I'll go back again with Napier. You're right. He's got to show control of the situation. Florida and South Carolina right now are kind of battling it out. I feel like with Napier and with Beamer, maybe if you want to throw Mark Stoops in there, maybe if you want to throw Eli Drinkowitz there at Missouri, and their three teams kind of battling for that third spot in the East right now behind Georgia and Georgia and Tennessee. Who's going to get in there and kind of fight for that position? And I think Florida, with their tradition, could push up there with Tennessee. I think South Carolina's making a push, but right now it's who's kind of third. Well, if you look at last year, Rob, South Carolina goes down to Florida, and Florida crushes them 38-6, and that moved Florida to 6-4 on the season. And they had Vanderbilt, I think they had Vanderbilt, and they had Florida State next. And all of a sudden you're going, boy, Billy Napier's first year, Anthony Richardson, if they can get to 8 wins, that's a heck of a start. You know that he's trying to build something. They lose to Vanderbilt, they lose to Florida State, and then the ugly bowl game where people had left.
Yeah. Oh.
South Carolina gets hammered down there, and they beat top 10 Tennessee, top 10 Clemson. They lose the bowl game, but it's exciting. It's Notre Dame. And South Carolina, boy, you talk about going in wildly different directions. And yeah, you're recruiting great right now, but as you just said, those players don't help this year. And man, Florida comes out of the gate in Salt Lake City against Utah on a Thursday night. Oh, that's difficult. And then you got Tennessee in, I think, the first 3 weeks. So I think today, and Billy Napier's pretty bland, to be quite honest. I was surprised. He was a little entertaining last year, but he's pretty bland. Does he show something today that gives you faith that he can get it done on the field? Because recruiting should never be a problem at Florida. It doesn't matter who it is. Recruiting should be a problem. Does Billy Napier say something today that gives you confidence he can turn this thing around in the swamp, on the field?
Yeah, I agree with you. And look, we're about out of time. I want to thank all of our sponsors who sent us up here to Nashville. Also, Red River Ford Toyota.com in Wynne, Arkansas. Red River Ford Toyota open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Service department, 7:30 to 12:30 on Saturdays. And Chad House, ECS House Industries, Cherry Valley, Arkansas. If you ever go see a farm and you see farm equipment out there, agriculture, we feed the world. I bet it was made at House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. We are so blessed to have great sponsors, great listeners, and again, like Gateway Tires and Service Centers, all of our listeners. Remember, most often we see the face of Christ and the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We're blessed. We're here in Nashville on Broadway. SEC Media Days. We're going downstairs. Will, I'll see you in just a minute. We'll have a question for who asked the dumbest question, who asked the best question of the week. We're going to have that contest on Friday. We'll know because we still have to go through tomorrow. But anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Until then, we are out of here. See you tomorrow.